Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. Bill Landis, Doug Lesmerises. Wednesday morning, what we learned from what we heard about from Ohio State on Tuesday. Bill, we had talked it out. I said we decided we'd do the 3 Ps. I lied. It's the 4 Ps. And hopefully it's not the 5 Ps, because the show that we did Tuesday night, I had to pause in the middle of it, which actually the pause was the 5th P, and then I had to go pee, which was the 6th P. So I am a man in his 50s who drinks a lot of beverages. I'll try not to have to pause this show to go to the bathroom.
Okay, I appreciate it. You can also just start doing the show in diapers, but that's your choice. I'll leave it up to you.
Give me like 18 months. I'm going to hold on. 18 months and I'll be there. All right. I'm actually going to start with the 4th P first. Matt Patricia. He's calling the defense from the sideline. Ryan Day was asked by our fellow Substacker, Bill Rabinowitz, why? And Ryan Day basically said, because I don't care and it's up to him.
Yeah, he said he made that choice. I'll leave it up to him. Just get off the field on 3rd down. We talked about this, though, right? Like we expected him to. I think he always did it. Obviously, he did it when he was a head coach with the Lions, but I think even when he was like his entire tenure of calling the defense for the Patriots, I believe he was on the field. That's why he was so visible and everyone noticed the pencil in his ear, right? So
yeah,
and that's
the 7th P, the pencil.
That's pencil. Yeah, he's a front guy. So like if he were, and I don't know if the same logic applies to defense as it does to offense, where like if maybe you're more of a if you're not a quarterback guy, you don't see it as well from the field kind of thing. But he's a defensive line linebacker guy, so maybe it makes more sense for him to be down there. But yeah, I wasn't surprised that he is at all. I would have been actually surprised if he were up in the box.
And get back to us the day after the Ohio State defense gives up 59 to somebody, and we'll be preparing for Ryan Day to tell Matt Patricia to get his butt upstairs. But as long as it's working, and it's working, then he can be where he's comfortable. And he's obviously most comfortable on the sideline. It's just a contrast that Ryan Day, the offensive play caller, is upstairs.
Yeah, I should I actually haven't done this. I'll try to do it on Saturday. Actually take inventory of who's upstairs and because I don't like Brian Hartline's upstairs and Billy Fessler's up there with him offensively. I don't know who defensively is upstairs. Josh Boyer's up there, the guy they added.
I think Taver Johnson might be up there.
Taver Johnson is definitely up there. I've seen him. It's like who you bump into when you're waiting in line for a hot dog. Taver Johnson, I definitely seen Taver Johnson, but I don't know if like Matt Guerreri's up there. I'll try to be intentional about hanging out by the coach's box before the game and see who's up there.
It is just difficult because there's just so many more people on the staff. It's not just about which of the 10 full-time assistants are up there, because Taver Johnson twice upon a time was the full-time cornerbacks coach at Ohio State. He's not that now, but to have him in the box, it's like he knows what to look at. He knows how to diagnose what's going on in a secondary, and he's not the safeties coach. He's not the corners coach. He's not Matt Guerreri. He's not Tim Walton. But it's like, okay, Taver Johnson's up there. That makes sense. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for diagnosing that.
It's right by the coffee. It's easy.
Coffee and hot dog together, or do you have to spread those apart by an hour?
I don't eat the press box hot dogs, no. But I drink a lot of the press box coffee, and people always get surprised when so I go to the soda machine, and I get a plastic cup, and I fill it to the brim with ice, and then I take that to the coffee machine.
Yes,
and there's enough ice in there that it cools the coffee instantly, and I got myself a nice iced coffee because iced coffee is not a seasonal beverage; it's a way of life.
My wife lives this way too. That's exactly how she lives, and that was a bonus Whatcha brought to you by Bill Landis. The full Whatcha on the Wednesday show for the premium Substack subscribers. Punt return, the 2nd P. Is it a little picky of like, number 1 team in the country, you better fix something? But like Ryan Day brought it up, and he brought it up as we got to fix this thing in the punt return game.
I mean, it's an ongoing thing, right? I feel like this is a consistent conversation, and at least my entire time covering the beat. Early when I started covering, like Jalen Marshall did it, and he was pretty good, but even that could be adventurous at times. And it has always felt a little adventurous. I don't think it's something that gets practiced a ton. And I'm not saying like specific to Ohio State. I just think like sort of generally doesn't get practiced a ton. So sometimes weird things happen when you get into a game with shadows and a ball that bounces funny. And there's definitely been some of that in Ohio State's first 2 games, especially against the Grambling game. And Ryan Day said they lost 47 yards of hidden yardage on punt return by letting balls bounce. He said part of that was because the Grambling punter was not hitting the ball right. So like it was coming out kind of funky and then it was hard to judge, which I guess is a point worth making. But you can't be giving yards away in the punt return game. It's something for, like I definitely agree that they need to clean up. It wasn't front of mind for me necessarily going into this game against Ohio, but I am glad that somebody asked it because it has been issues, probably too strong of a word, but noticeable through 2 games that things aren't probably as tight as they need to be there.
I don't remember what year it was, but it was a season-long conversation about why is the Ohio State punt returner so far back? The ball is hitting short and hitting the ground and skipping past him. Move the punt returner up. Wasn't that like that was like a 6-game conversation one year, wasn't it?
2 years ago, yeah, I think. Yeah.
So I don't know if we're there with that. I did look this up on cfbstats.com. Just team average punt return yardage per punt. Where Ohio State has ranked in the Ryan Day era, I didn't look at this year because we're only 2 games in. Previous years, 59th, 114th, 59th, 100th, 73rd, 72nd. And then the 3 years before that it goes back in the urban era, 73rd, 98th, 105th. They stink at this.
Mm-hmm. It's just not a priority. Yeah.
It's not a priority. Because hasn't it? Most of the time it feels like just catch it.
Yes. And I do think they get themselves in trouble sometimes because they know that people talk about it and like want it to be a weapon. So then they end up kind of returning kicks or even catching kicks that they shouldn't. There have been far too many examples over the last few years of an Ohio State punt returner catching the ball inside the 10-yard line. It's like, what are you doing? So the one thing that was not asked and maybe should get asked, and like now that Brian Hartline is the offensive play caller, he and Keenan Bailey were like co-spearheading the return game last year. And I would assume that Brian Hartline is not doing that this year. So I don't know exactly what the coaching dynamic is there on the kick return. Kickoff is just like call a fair catch, you get to the 25. I don't think Ohio State is ever really concerned with that, but punt can be a weapon, certainly more than kickoff return can, but doesn't ever really seem like the Buckeyes treat it as such, except for sometimes putting Jeremiah Smith back there like they did once against Texas, or sporadically putting Caleb Downs back there, which we haven't seen yet, but I'm sure we will sometime this year.
And Ryan Day did mention both those names. Brandon Inniss is back there most of the time. We did see a little bit of Bryson Rogers in the Grambling game, although Ryan Day didn't mention his name this time. He mentioned the 4 names he mentioned, right, were Inniss, Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, and Carnell Tate, right?
Yes.
Which is just like explosive. And then we've kind of been having conversations about like how explosive is Brandon Inniss, but you know what he'll do? He'll catch it. So we've had that, when they've had like guys like KJ Hill back there, is he the most explosive guy? No, but he's got great hands. He's going to catch it. Because if you catch it and don't fumble it and just hand the ball to the Ohio State quarterback, you got a pretty good chance of scoring.
That's all it is. Yeah, you just don't want to hand the ball to the Ohio State quarterback in your own end zone. So stop catching it inside the 10. Yeah.
So it is that I also think, no offense, special teams is dead.
I don't know about punt. I think kickoff certainly is. Punting still creates advantageous field position scenarios that are worth valuing, I think.
Fair. The return game is dead. So like if you got a punter who can boom it, who can kick it out of bounds, who can coffin corner it, like that still matters. I just think compare it to 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I still think it's a thing in an equal matchup game among lesser teams that can swing a game. Because when your offense isn't great, you're like, man, it would be really helpful if our punt returner could spring one for 61 yards. When your offense is great, it's like, dear Lord, please let Cooper DeJean run this back because otherwise we're going to get shut out. Like that, right? Yeah. So then, yes. And even in the Tressel days when Tressel was defense and special teams, there's not a lot of teams that are like, what is it? Oh, offense and special teams is what wins game. It's special teams is always coupled with defense, because then special teams field position matters more. Or if you can pop one, you get points that way, because the offense is the third part of your team. If the offense is the first part of your team, just catch it. Just catch it.
But just catch it. Don't put yourself in a bad spot, which I think you could argue Ohio State probably does too often.
Which is what Ryan Day's talking about. He was not talking on Tuesday about like, man, we got to run one back. He was saying, just don't let it skip past us anymore for 20 extra yards.
Yeah.
Riley Pettijohn, the continuing conversation about who's flashing as a young guy on Saturday mattered. I think there's two leading contenders for this. But the way Ryan Day answered questions Tuesday, he certainly talked more about one guy than the other guy, right?
Yeah, it's Bo Jackson at running back and Riley Pettijohn at linebacker. And I want to say that Ryan was asked maybe two specific questions about each guy.
Yes.
And in both instances of being asked about Bo Jackson, like he kind of didn't talk about Bo Jackson. He sort of just talked about young guys in general. But then he was super specific with his answers about Riley Pettijohn and how impressive it was and why they gave him defensive player of the game, and that what Pettijohn put on the field on Saturday against Grambling is likely to lead to increased playing time, both on special teams and perhaps at linebacker.
Which is interesting, because it feels like there's more opportunity at running back, because no offense, there's not an Arvell Reese or a Sonny Styles at running back. But yet, the conversation is more about linebacker.
Do you think any part of that is, I'm an offensive coach, I'm going to talk a little crispy about the defensive guys because I'm not really making the decision on what happens there. But when it comes to an offensive player, I'm going to hold them to a much higher standard.
And I also think, I mean, back to the logic of a lot of times it's opposite world. They don't want Bo Jackson to get a big head because they actually think Bo Jackson could be a major contributor for them this year, and they want to make sure he pass protects and doesn't fumble. So they're not going to say anything nice about him because they need him. And Riley Pettijohn possibly, frankly, is just blocked by three guys so they can puff him up a little bit because he might be getting antsy, feeling that he's capable of playing and there's not a spot for him. So I do think sometimes it's actually the guy they said the most nice stuff about is not the guy that it actually is going to affect on the field, because Riley Pettijohn needs the words maybe because he's more blocked. Bo Jackson doesn't need the words because he might get 17 carries against Michigan.
I think, my assumption would be that it's that. I'm not trying to take anything away from Riley Pettijohn. He was great in that game. And I actually do believe that he'll get more special teams work. So he didn't play on special teams at all against Texas. He played 12 special team snaps against Grambling. I bet he's a special teams like fixture the rest of the year. I think he did earn at least that much. And then, Ohio State will play more games where it's up by a lot, and Pettijohn will be, I think, quick into the game in those scenarios too. But if you're talking high leverage situations, playing with the starters, I just don't think that world exists for Riley Pettijohn unless one of those three guys gets abducted by aliens. Whereas like Bo Jackson, I think the world very much does exist. And Ryan Day wants to massage that the right way, I think, as they like get closer to that reality.
Also, just talking to people in the building, just so we're making sure we make this clear, they love Riley Pettijohn.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like they love Riley Pettijohn. This is just is there space for him to play conversation in a realistic way. So like they are very enthused about that kid, and they were very enthused about what he showed in his 15 snaps of defense against Grambling State.
Mm-hmm.
Last one is the transfer portal conversation. Credit where credit is due. Tim May just like squeeze this in under the wire at the last question of the press conference. And sometimes you can feel the coach have like 1 foot away from the podium, the 8th P, the podium. Although it's actually not a podium, it's like a lectern, right? Like it's the whole thing. Like it's not really
a podium is a platform. Yeah.
9th P. And so sometimes you're like, the hook is coming for the coach. It's like, okay, that's 27 minutes. I thought we'd be done at 25. And then Tim's like, hey, Ron, one more. But Ryan Day was not in a hurry to get out of there. He wanted to stay and answer the question about what he thinks about the proposal to have a single transfer portal window that would open on January 2nd, the day after the quarterfinals in the college football playoff, 10th P. And he very much is against the timing. Would you agree with this? It's not that he's against a single portal window, because currently now there's two.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he likes the idea of one. I don't think he likes the timing of the one.
Yep, that's right. I think most coaches are in favor of one portal window. It's the figuring out the timing that is the sticking point. And I guess you have to consider the people coming at it from different angles. Like, of course, Ohio State, which figures to be in the playoff more often than not, and everyone like the Notre Dames, the Georgias, the Texases, like those teams probably would hate to have that window open on January 2nd. But the rest of the sport, the people outside of the 12 who are in the playoff, or 16, whatever it becomes, they don't care. That gives them a head start on the teams that are trying to win semifinal and championship games. So I think for the good of the sport, the people who are making those decisions, and I would agree with Ryan Day, should keep in mind the teams that are trying to win a championship and not have that portal window there. It really makes no sense. But we're still in this world where we're adhering to the academic calendar, which we were past that point 25 years ago, but here we are, like, still trying to shoehorn stuff in based on what that academic calendar looks like, when that's just like it's a professional sport, but it's not treated like it when it comes to roster building and transactional windows. So they're like halfway down the right road with having one portal window, but they veered off in the wrong direction when they decided it should still be in the middle of the college football playoff, when it should be after the playoff is over.
So Ryan Day made it sound like none of the coaches in the Big Ten like this, and Tony Petitti, the 11th P, as the Big Ten commissioner, also does not like it. But can you do it? So, like, I guess the question is, are you just going to have guys show up in the 4th week of class? Because you want to get them in, you want to get them in for spring football, so that you have to have them in for March. So you can't just say, well, you can transfer, but like it. So the whole point, but then it's just blowing up the academic calendar. I don't know. And again, I don't know what the coaches think, but it's like, if you just did it, well, you have to stay with your team, and we'll do it after spring ball. Like, you have to stay with your team when the season ends, go through spring ball, and then see what happens. Because I still think the idea of like, let's see how the spring competition went. Oh, I didn't win the job. Now I want to transfer. Now, if there's not a portal window there, that feels worse. Because in January, you're making assumptions about what your role on your current team would be. By April or May, you know what your role would be. So I'm not so sure that both academically and from a roster management standpoint, and the teams would have a better idea too. We think we're light here. Oh, wait, a bunch of guys showed out in spring ball. We don't need an interior offensive lineman. We actually need tight ends. Maybe make it then, but like, does that make any sense to you that if they're going to have, I think one window is good, but should it be spring instead of winter?
So I guess, like, without being in the nitty gritty of it and potentially being blind to whatever hurdles might come with that, like that, what you suggested to me makes sense. Because, if you make it in May and guys can still get there in June to like kind of hit the ground running with your summer offseason program, and then you'd have all of camp. So like, are those 15 practices, they're not invaluable in spring, but are they so valuable that like you have to have your transfers in before spring ball? Like, especially like a lot of these guys are incredibly experienced. So I think post spring makes sense, but I would imagine, and I actually don't know what the preference of college football coaches would be, but that would seemingly eliminate the hurdle of adhering to the academic calendar for the most part, while also, I think, logically making a little bit of sense with just sort of the natural ebbs and flows of the college football season. But it doesn't seem like that is on the table at all. It just seems like, at what point in January is this going to happen?
So then it was a little surprising to me that Ryan Day made it sound like all the Big Ten coaches agree with this, that's the wrong timing. Because I've said this on a previous show, and Ohio State certainly doesn't want to hear this, but in every sport, the worst teams get a little bit or a lot bit of an edge in player acquisition in an attempt to help the worst teams get better because the good teams don't need as much help getting better. So the Tennessee Titans had the first pick in the NFL draft, and the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl and had the last pick. And nobody thinks that's weird. That's how sports works. College football doesn't work that way at all. The worst teams get nothing. And frankly, what they're getting now is getting their rosters torn apart by the best teams. They can't even keep their own guys. It's not that they don't get an edge in acquiring players. They also get a negative edge in keeping players. So if you start the transfer portal window on January 2nd and the best 4 teams in the sport, right? Because it's after the quarters. So there's only 4 teams that are still playing, right?
Yes. Well, for now, yeah.
So the best 4 teams in the sport are like, oh man, I can't. We're not even thinking about the portal. We're trying to win the national championship now. And maybe the next best 4, the top 8, are like, well, we just played yesterday and lost. We haven't had time to go through this. Let's say it affects the best 8 teams in the sport, and they are then behind in the transfer portal. I'm not so sure that's a bug. That might be a feature. It's like, yeah, you're behind because you're already good. This is the one thing we can do in college football to give worse teams an advantage. So if you're not in the final 8, you have an edge on talking and negotiating with portal guys. It's not the other teams can't do it. It's just they're not their priority. But if you're 3-9, yeah, you maybe have a better chance of getting the guy who's going to make you better than Ohio State does if they're getting ready for a semifinal. I actually think if you explained it that way, I actually think it's like, yeah, it's unfair to the 4 best teams, but it's also unfair to the Eagles that they pick 31 spots after the Titans. But it's the cost of winning. But nobody has talked about it that way, and I don't think they ever will talk about it that way. But if you do talk about it that way, I actually think it makes sense.
It does, but then there's the player perspective too, right? If you're a player on one of those 8 teams, while everyone else is getting their portal stuff together, like you have to make a decision of, am I going to stick around with my current team? How much effort am I going to put into like finding a new home if I'm a guy who wants to transfer, right? So it's not that dynamic doesn't exist in pro sports. The player, the freedom of movement the players haven't in college football, which like I think is largely good, but also I think has had some negatives to it as well. But and listen, like the coaches who are complaining about this window being potentially as early as it is in January aren't taking that into account. Clear, like I don't want to say that they are, but I think we could as we talk about it, right? Like what's best for the players in that scenario too. And I think the answer might be a later window.
Portal in, I actually think it could make sense for what I outlined. Portal out, you make a very good point. We have to get out of the business of the Bo Prabula situation from last year at Penn State, where this guy is your backup quarterback. He's your wrinkle quarterback. He's been a pretty important part of getting Penn State into the playoff. And then he's forced to make a decision to leave because if he waits, it's going to affect his future. And then meanwhile, he's punished. He doesn't get to play in the playoff. Penn State's punished to not have a guy. And like that timing is insane. If that would never happen in any other sport. And so if you just keep it in the winter and blow up the academic component of this and just make it that, you know what, if you transfer in the winter portal, you can practice with the team and work out with the team and you don't have to be enrolled in classes. You have to be registered as a student at the university, but you don't have to take classes. You just got to take classes the next time there's a full semester or quarter, and that's it. And that would solve it, right?
I think so. And also, like, it doesn't, I don't know, is it that hard to like make up 4 weeks of classes or to just take a lighter course load on the semester that you're transferring and then load up in another semester to make up for it? Like there has to, like, if you know, education's part of this. I don't want to pretend like it's 0%. It's a low percent, I think, when we're talking about what is basically professional football now. But there just have to be workarounds, like to not have that be such an impediment, because that's all it is now. So I don't know, like, but it doesn't really seem like anybody's interested in doing that. And I guess there's optics involved with that from the academic side, that they wouldn't want to ever put academics in a position where they seem lesser than. Like I suppose I understand that too, but I bet those people on the academic side like the checks that football gets to their programs. So find a way to work around it and make the football calendar make more sense.
And by the way, in the end, it's not about what two guys shouting into a microphone say. It's not what fans say. The coaches understand this, and the coaches understand. I do think there just has to be a nod, whether when you're talking about the ultimate freedom of players, when you're talking about working within the parameters of the academic calendar, roster balance, roster building, knowing who's going to be on your team, being able to plan for that and execute a strategy and not doing everything by the seat of your pants, that has to matter. Because frankly, like in sports, because that helps create the playing field. And I don't even want to use the phrase level playing field, but the playing field. You build a team. A team doesn't fall out of the sky. You build a team. And so team building, frankly, probably should get preference over academic calendars and probably should get preference over, whatever else we're doing here. And at the moment, because it's what keeps the sport going. Because if you if you completely destroy the fabric of how a team is built, it's such a team sport. There's really going to be negative consequences for everybody involved, including the fans. So they just 13th P, just prioritize that a little bit. And if you do that, there's a way to figure it out. And it's one of those things. Like again, college football is still stuck in this world where they want to act like athletes are just like regular students, but then they also want to act like athletes aren't just like regular students. And if you said, well, I don't know, a regular student couldn't come in the 6th week of economics, and it's like,
great. They don't run a 4.3 either.
Yeah. Go throw your body around. Yeah. Go put your brain on the line. And then we'll figure out if you should be able to get into econ in week 6 or not. So the hardest part, to yell about college sports. Yeah. They want to be everything and nothing at the same time. And this is one of those places where it comes up and it's just like, how about let's not have players leave teams right before the semifinals? Well, I thought Ohio State was in good shape, but 2/3 of their starting offensive line just transferred because they were like, well, this is my time to go. That's the window. It is pretty stupid.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are all the P's you need. I made it. I didn't have to go to the bathroom for this show. I'm going to celebrate that, I think, at the end of every show at this point when I'm 52. Thursday, Ohio State pick show, Ohio State versus Ohio University. Friday, national pick show, a bunch of interesting national games this week. Wednesday on the Substack, a big Q&A for our Substack subscribers. We've got a lot of interesting questions. If you want to be able to ask us questions, if you want to do the live chat during the game with us, if you want to be able to read everything that we write over there, and if you want to get a couple of the premium audio and video offerings that we do over at Substack, you can go check it out. Bill and Doug OSU Substack. You Google it, you'll find it. You can sign up just with your email at the start and poke around a little bit and see what you think. Right, Landis?
Yeah. Bill and Doug OSU.substack.com. Or just go to our Twitter accounts and you can find it there.
Then you can find it there. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was the Bill and Doug Show.